Maxwell Holloway moved like a man haunted, each footfall echoing a ghostly rhythm of past pain and resilience. A middle-aged man of fading athletic build and a countenance etched with the lines of untold stories, he passed by Maple Grove's quaint storefronts and picturesque white picket fences. His gaze, however, was distant, lost in the shadows of bygone days. His office was a quiet space, a refuge from the world filled with dog-eared case files and the musk of past victories and failures. He turned on the dim desk lamp, casting an amber glow that highlighted the swirling dust motes and his weathered features, bearing the kind soul beneath the hardened exterior. On his desk lay a single faded photograph of his departed wife, its edges worn thin with time and overuse. "You were the best of me, Eleanor," he murmured, a whisper meant only for the hallowed memory of her. Grief, a bitter yet familiar draft, coiled around his heart, but Maxwell did not recoil. He had long learned that pain was a companion, not an enemy, in his solitary existence. The telephone jangled abruptly, a discordant note slicing through the solemn silence. It was Matilda, his secretary, known for her diligent work ethic and her soft spot for lost souls. She informed him of a new case, a Reverend Ezra Foley of Maple Grove, a religious leader with a supposed halo of sanctity that seemed to be fading. This Reverend Foley had found prosperity with a large company bearing his name, but suspicions were now being cast on the virtuous facade. The town, once an idyllic painting of suburban normality, seemed to ripple beneath the surface with unease. "All right, Matilda," he responded, his voice steady despite the inkling of dread that flickered in his mind. "Let's dig deeper into Reverend Foley's sanctum." As night embraced Maple Grove, he waded through a labyrinth of cryptic financial records, hushed whispers, and coded correspondences. His mind, always his sharpest tool, pieced together the puzzle with an uncanny precision. But as he inched closer to the enigma that was Reverend Foley, he couldn't shake off a sense of profound unease, a feeling that he was not merely uncovering a case of financial misconduct, but tiptoeing around the precipice of something far darker. The edges of reality seemed to fray, and he sensed the thin lines separating the mundane from the extraordinary beginning to blur. As the dawn approached, he leaned back in his chair, his face washed in the pale light filtering through the blinds. The benign religious leader and the large corporation's insignia, now seemingly insidious, stared back at him from the piles of papers. His thoughts strayed to his partner, Teresa Donovan, her steadfast support and an anchor in his tumultuous sea. "I'll need to bring Teresa in on this," he mused, already imagining her frown as she dove into the enigma with him. The shadows of Maple Grove lengthened, and the silent promise of an oncoming storm lingered in the air. As he drifted into a fitful sleep, the first whispers of an eldritch reality began to unfurl within the confines of his subconscious, casting dreadful shapes upon the canvas of his dreams. In the light of day, the town of Maple Grove seemed benign again, its shadows from the night before seemingly tucked away into the quiet corners. Maxwell, however, knew better. As he walked down the city's main artery, he could almost feel the undercurrent of unease thrumming beneath the pavement and hear the whispers of secrets ensnared in the town's tree-lined streets. Today, he wouldn't tread this path alone. Teresa Donovan, his trusted partner and anchor in the tempest, would accompany him. Teresa, with her sharp intellect and eyes that missed nothing, seemed to understand the unspoken language of the world in a way he admired. He needed her clarity now, more than ever. In the refuge of their shared office, they dissected the enigma of Reverend Foley, poring over documents and snippets of hushed conversations. Teresa, usually an open book to him, seemed distant, her gaze often lingering on the occult symbols they unearthed within the company's labyrinthine paperwork. "Max, do you feel it?" she asked one night, her voice a whisper against the rhythmic tick of the office clock. Her eyes, usually so clear, held a smoky uncertainty that sent a chill down his spine. "Feel what?" he asked, his gaze steady on her. "The tremor beneath our reality, like we're stumbling upon something we're not meant to know," she replied, her voice imbued with a tinge of fear that he had never heard before. Days turned into weeks, and the tension grew, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. The line between their professional pursuit and the underbelly of the world began to blur. leaving Maxwell grappling with the increasing disconnect. The climax came one rainy evening. Teresa, usually his rock, crumbled in front of him, confessing her affiliation with the same eldritch cult they were investigating. The room spun, and he felt the reality he knew shatter, replaced by a darker one, haunted by cosmic shadows. "I'm sorry, Max," she choked out between sobs. "I thought I was strong enough to resist their call." He stood there frozen, betrayal and disbelief wrestling in his mind. His partner, his confidant, was now a traitor. He knew then that he was not only battling the horrors of the cosmos, but also the treachery of his own kind. As the echoes of Teresa's confession reverberated in the room, he felt an overwhelming dread creep into his soul. He was alone, staring into the abyss, with the shadows of Maple Grove looming ominously around him. His world, once limited to crime scenes and gritty underworlds, had now become a stage for grotesque entities far beyond human comprehension. Through the open window, the once benign Minnesota night seemed to darken, the cosmos stretching out above him, uncaring and vast. His investigation had crossed the realm of mere human corruption and stood now on the threshold of something unimaginably horrific, an ancient darkness stirring beneath the veneer of Maple Grove. The dawn following Teresa's confession came reluctantly, staining the sky with anemic hues of gray and gold. Maxwell, bearing the heavy burden of betrayal, ventured into the heart of the storm, a lone figure against the backdrop of an awakening Maple Grove. The town he once knew was no more. It was now a grotesque caricature of its former self, hiding an insidious secret beneath the facade of normality. Even the chirping of the birds seemed like the echoes of some distant, horrifying chant. Maxwell found himself standing in front of the imposing edifice of Foley Enterprises, an uncanny monument to the perverse nature of humanity. The building stood like a monolith, its grotesque shadows threatening to consume the morning light. Within the cold, sterile halls of Foley Enterprises, he moved like a phantom, his presence going unnoticed. There was a chilling synchrony in the movements of the employees, their smiles a little too vacant, their eyes a little too void of humanity. His own eyes, though weighed down by the trauma of betrayal, found an unnerving pattern within the paperwork. Codes and symbols that once seemed abstract now screamed of the grotesque rites dedicated to entities far beyond human comprehension. "Ezra," he muttered to himself, his voice barely more than a whisper. Reverend Foley was no longer just a man, he was a harbinger of cosmic horrors. As he continued his solitary investigation, he could not shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes studying his every move. The shadows seemed to breathe around him, whispering tales of dread that echoed in the hollow chambers of his heart. One evening in the abandoned wing of Foley Enterprises, he stumbled upon an inconspicuous door, its existence easily overlooked. Pushing it open, he stepped into an otherworldly scene, a cavernous room etched with eldritch symbols and filled with a palpable aura of dread. A shiver ran down his spine as he scanned the room. The reality of Maple Grove had been distorted, warped by the horror that had permeated the town. His mind screamed at the sight. The horrifying truths presented starkly challenging his sanity. Yet he stood his ground, his spirit indomitable. Despite the grotesque revelation, he found himself drawn deeper into the abyss. As he emerged from the building that night, the once familiar landscape of Maple Grove was a foreign entity, forever distorted by the grotesque entity lurking beneath. Every corner of the town now whispered secrets of cosmic horror to him, transforming his reality into a surreal nightmare. His lone battle against the cosmic entity had begun, the struggle threatening to consume him, yet leaving him with an iron resolve that would echo in the darkness to come. Maxwell Holloway, once an inhabitant of the familiar, mundane world, now stood on the precipice of unimaginable horrors. As he navigated the twisted, monstrous version of Maple Grove, each moment was a crushing dialogue between the cosmic dread enveloping him and the steely resilience residing within his heart. Haunted by Teresa's betrayal and faced with Reverend Foley's monstrous revelations, he found himself embarking on the final leg of his journey, armed with nothing but his will and the unyielding pursuit of truth. His footfalls echoed like dirges as he walked towards the Reverend's abode, a grand mansion, a grotesque monument of corruption set against the setting sun, its silhouette imbued with an almost eldritch energy. His heart pounded in rhythm with the ominous pulse of the town, every beat a resounding affirmation of his resolution. Within the mansion, Reverend Folly awaited, swathed in an aura of unnatural calmness. His eyes, once charismatic, now held an abyssal quality, as if they reflected the dark truths of the cosmos. "Folly," Maxwell greeted, his voice resonating with quiet authority. "Your reign of terror ends here." The ensuing confrontation was not of fists and firearms, but of wills and unearthly revelations. Maxwell was drawn into a maelstrom of eldritch truths as Folly unraveled his monstrous doctrine, each word another stitch in the grotesque tapestry of cosmic horror. As the eerie discourse reached its zenith, the town of Maple Grove seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for the world to tilt off its axis. And for a moment, it did. The boundaries of reality warped, revealing the true face of the entity that had claimed Maple Grove. But within this maelstrom of chaos and cosmic terror, Maxwell stood unwavering. He was but a man against a monstrous god, and yet he did not falter. His words, laced with defiance, echoed in the cavernous hall, an affirmation of human resilience against the grotesque horrors of the cosmos. "I am Maxwell Holloway," he declared, his voice resounding with an indomitable spirit, "and I am not afraid of you." And then, in the heart of the eclipse of truth, a shift occurred. The entity, for all its monstrous might, was taken aback. For in its eons of existence, it had never encountered a mortal who dared to challenge its reign. The concept was alien, a glitch in its cosmic understanding. And within this glitch, Maxwell saw his chance. Using the confusion to his advantage, he managed to disrupt the entity's hold over Maple Grove, severing the invisible threads it had woven around the town. The world shifted back into focus, and reality, though forever tainted, reasserted itself. As dawn washed over Maple Grove, he emerged victorious, albeit scarred, forever bearing the mark of the horrors he'd faced. The world had tilted back on its axis, and in the lingering silence of his victory, he could only hope that they'd staved off the darkness, at least for now. Yet beneath the scars and trauma, Maxwell Holloway was still the man he'd always been, kind, selfless, and open-minded. His pursuit of truth had led him down a terrifying path, but he emerged not as a victim of cosmic horror, but as a beacon of human resilience. And in the heart of the quiet town of Maple Grove, under the benign Minnesota sky, that was enough. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.